What's up guys, I'm back with this month's UK property market update for you guys. You might notice on screen right now that the format of the data has slightly changed. That's because up until now I've been doing my updates based on the top 20 cities in the UK. Now I'm upgrading guys, I'm giving you everything, every single region, every single city in the UK. It's something that I've been wanting to do for a while. I've finally found a reliable source and I'm upgrading the content, I'm upgrading the information that I'm giving to you guys. So let's get straight into this guys with an overall summary. In the UK overall, prices have dipped in this month. In the month of August, they've dipped by 0.3%, a relatively small dip. But the reason why this is significant, guys, is because this is the first time this year in the last 8 months that the property prices have dipped. If you've watched my previous updates, we have been on a meteoric rise, to put it mildly, with month-for-month growth in house prices in the UK. Now for the first time this year, for the first time in 8 months, we've had a dip right here of 0.3%. And in monetary terms, that means that the average price of a UK property has fallen by £1,776. But nonetheless, guys, that's still 5.6% up on last year. That is very good growth for a year-on-year comparison, guys, especially when you consider this time last year, we were 5 months into the global health crisis. People were already on the hunt for space, they were already on the hunt for searching for new homes. The property market was beginning to curve upwards, as we will see as we go down further on in this presentation. So despite there being a very slight drop in this month in August, overall very strong growth on last year. Now, what's driving this, guys? What is driving this slight decrease this month in the UK property market? Well, if we take a look at the bottom half of this table, it's what we call these top of the ladder properties. What are top of the ladder properties? These are basically the larger end 4-bedroom plus properties. They have fallen by 0.8% in the month of August. So you can see from July to August, the price has actually dropped by £4,699. Now, these top of the ladder properties are a lot more expensive than the second stepper properties, which are essentially 3 to 4 beds, and the first time buyer properties. And because on average they are double and triple the price of these two, a fall in these is going to skew the overall price of the UK property market downwards. And you can actually see this in the monthly change column right here. Second stepper properties and first time buyer properties have actually gone up marginally by 0.6 and 0.3%. So they've grown from July to August. However, the decrease in the top of the ladder properties has brought the overall average of UK properties down. So let's go further down. What is actually driving this? What is driving the overall decrease in property prices in the UK? Well, one thing, guys, summer holidays, that's the main thing that has led to a slowdown in August. Typically during this time of the month, when children are coming off of school and families are going on holiday or they're taking breaks, people aren't really trying to move during this time of the year each year. So year on year, you generally tend to see a slowdown of the housing market in the UK, and thus a lessening of price pressure. And it's pretty likely that you'll see a bounce after the summer period is over. I think kids are back to school now. So now that families are done with their holidays and children are back to school after 6 weeks off, I think it's still 6 weeks, those who are planning to move before then can get back to that. And I think we'll see a bounce and a slight uptick next month. We'll see. So let's go further on and have a look at the asking price trend. Now, the asking price isn't necessarily the price that a seller will receive. It's the price that they're aiming to get when they're selling their property, but it's a good indication of sale prices as well. So what we see on this graph is that the asking price remained in and around the £320,000 mark all the way from August 2020 to round about March 2021, and then you see a noticeable hike up to just under £340,000 from March to where we're at now. Now the question is, what has caused this? We know a few things. We know that in June 2020, the stamp duty holiday was announced. And what that meant was a lot of people saved money on their property purchases because they didn't have to pay that tax. Then around about April, when the budget was announced, they indeed confirmed that the stamp duty holiday would be ending in June. So if you put yourselves in the shoes of a seller, if you've seen the announcement come out in April that the stamp duty holiday is ending in June and there's already a high demand for properties, when you factor in the fact that a lot of people have been searching for space, if you've watched my other updates, you'll know what that means, but essentially during the health crisis, there's been a very significant trend in people wanting to move to bigger houses in more rural parts of the UK where they have more space and they're around less people in less densely populated areas. Now, what that's done has increased the demand for houses in the UK and also the price. So if you know that the stamp duty holiday is coming to an end in June, you know that there's huge demand, perhaps you're going to increase the price of the property that you're selling because you know that there's a demand there and you know that you can get more for your house. And also, as we know that the UK is going through a demand boom at this moment in time, but it takes time for that to be proven. So the health crisis began in March 2020, and it's taken a while for the data really to reveal that this is a sustained boom. So as more and more people realize what we are looking at from the i.e. property market boom, and they become aware of that fact, they start to increase the prices, the asking prices of their houses to naturally gain more profit, because that's what people do. Let me know your thoughts on that, guys, and let me know if there's any other reasons in the comment section that you think we've seen this rise, particularly from March onwards. And just moving on to the 5-year asking price trend. This was essentially a 1-year asking price trend from August 2020 to August 2021. If we look at that over 5 years, we can see the wider context. So from June till the same period in May, 4 years, there was only really a kind of £20,000 variance. So at a low, we're talking at 290, and at a high, 310. And you can see that we oscillated between that variance for those 4 years. Enter the global health crisis from basically this point here. And you can see that we've blown out of that corridor from 290 to 310 and kind of shot up to 340 in the space of just over a year. So you can clearly see when we extend this data out over those 5 years, you can clearly see the effect that the health crisis has had on the property market. It's undeniable, guys. And now let's move on to the average time to sell a property. Now, we said just now that there has been huge demand as a result of the global health crisis, and also in part due to the government policy of the stamp duty holiday. That absolutely has increased demand for houses. So the average time to sell a house or secure a buyer, as it's put here, is basically a really good proxy indicator for demand. Now, in the graph showing the average asking price, we saw a hike from basically March onwards going up here towards the 340,000 mark. When we look at the average time to sell a house, from March onwards here, we can see a significant drop corresponding to that from 51 days, so that's basically just over a month and a half, to 36 days. And if we go just 3 months further back than March, i.e. January, the beginning of this month, we're talking just 8 months ago, guys, time to sell a house has pretty much just under halved, which is significant. What does that tell us? It tells us that there is it confirms to us, guys, that there is a huge demand for properties in the UK. That means more people are bidding for properties at the same time, and thus sellers are really in a good position and they're able to raise the prices, as we saw just now. So let's now have a look at what's happening in the regions. As I said at the beginning of the video, guys, previously I was looking at just the top 20 cities in the UK. Now we're able to look at all of the cities, and they're grouped by regions. So on this map, what I want to draw your attention to are the dark shaded areas and the light shaded areas. Dark shaded areas are basically those areas of the UK where property prices have fallen from last year to this year. So if you live in any of these regions, the price of a property where you live has fallen. If you live in any of the lighter green regions, the price of your property from last month to this month has risen. So now, how do these regions stack up against each other? Well, a few of these regions are absolutely killing it. Wales is on fire, guys. Look at that, 10.9% on last year. Wow. And 2.3% on last month. That's steroid growth, guys. Southwest is doing very well, 8.4%. Northwest, 8.6%. 1.5% growth on last year. Wow. And Yorkshire and the Humber doing very well, 6.2% on last year, 1.1% from July to now. East Midlands, even though it's gone down by 0.1%, it's still grown by 6.9%, and East of England 7.5%, South East 7.2%. Guys, overall, all of the regions, with the exception of London, poor London there, and the North East, are doing really well when you consider how they were doing last year. And Scotland as well. They're all doing really well on last year. I would happily happily take a property in a decent location in any of these regions, guys. The UK has had a really good year for the reasons that we've mentioned before. So for all of my Londoners out there, this source of data is really useful, and I prefer it to the last one because it separates out London. Why? Because, guys, London is a bubble. You have the rest of the UK, and then London pretty much does its own thing. Anyone who's lived in London and paid rent or bought a house in London, you know that firsthand. And this is a breakdown of how all of the boroughs in London are doing. As we just saw above, the price growth in London from last year to this year is just a measly 1%. But this shows you how that's spread out across the boroughs. So right at the top, you have Barking and Dagenham, Kingston upon Thames, and Kensington and Chelsea. Westminster's up there, and Harrow in the top 5. Let's go with the top 5 for now. And the growth ranges from 5.2% to 7.3%. Barking and Dagenham looking particularly good, 7.3% growth, with an average house price of £345,000. I think there's an important lesson in here, guys. Even though a region or a city might be doing badly on an aggregate scale, there are always going to be pockets within that city or region where you can still get a good deal. Just because the wider region as a whole is doing bad doesn't mean that there still can't be deals to have. Granted, it might be a bit harder to find them. And then at the bottom, we have, in the bottom 5, in the relegation zone, Haringey, Lewisham, Tower Hamlets, Islington, and Camden. Again, just interesting, guys, to see how the various boroughs are doing in London. I always find this type of stuff interesting. So that's a summary for this month's property market update, guys. Let me know what you think of the new source of data and if you find it just as helpful or even more helpful, and I'll see you guys next month.